Today, I had the absolute honor of sitting down with Lou Compagnone, who is the Director of Artificial Intelligence at Datacom. This episode was outstanding, and I am so excited to share it with you. Lou is just somebody that is very optimistic about where we're heading in the future and how AI is going to impact our lives in a really, really positive way. I also do throw some things at her, which she really takes on board. And we have a really, really good conversation today about the future of work, the jobs that are going to be obsolete, and how we can all make sure that we're ready for what's coming. We're not shying away from the future of technology, how we can be using AI in our day-to-day lives right now to enhance productivity and just our overall output in our work. So get ready to take some notes, get ready to tune in, because what Lou has to say today is fascinating and really, really interesting. So enjoy the podcast. Now over to Lou. Lou, welcome to the Career Confidence Podcast today. I am absolutely delighted to have you on. Can you give the audience a bit about your background, your career journey, and what got you to where you are today as the Director of Artificial Intelligence at Datacom? So Lou, over to you.
Sure. Thanks, Georgie. So I'm really delighted to be here. So thanks for having me. So yeah, I'll tell you a little bit, maybe firstly about what I'm doing now, and then I'll take you back to how I got there, which is a weird winding road, if I'm honest. So currently I'm the Director of Artificial Intelligence for Datacom, and I'm based in Melbourne, but my role spans across Australia and New Zealand, with Datacom being a New Zealand company. And my role is sort of twofold. So I am really about helping to enable Datacom to really leverage artificial intelligence in a safe and responsible way. And my second part of my role is really about helping customers to do the same. So I'm from a tech company, but really for me, although I'm from a tech company, I never start by talking about technology. I always start talking from a business perspective. And then it's more about actually how technology can be an enabler. And I guess that probably takes me to my background. So my background is not actually in technology. So way back when, I actually started out with an arts degree. So my background is actually in creative writing and cultural studies. And I sort of accidentally fell into tech, I guess. So I started by writing. I used to be a food writer and a travel writer. And then I got into editing. I got into editing magazines, and then I got into editing websites. And I guess that's when I say I went to the nerd side. I sort of crossed over too much into the technology space at that point. I tried to do a pivot back into sort of going more for print media and tried to be a book editor. And I just got bored, quite frankly, because I was so used to working in tech and content. And then from there, I just guess I got more interested in the user experience side of things, and then got into customer experience and service design. And then from then on, I just couldn't stop working for tech companies. But I always brought really that sort of human lens. And I guess a big part of what I do now, actually, oddly, is still storytelling to some extent, because it's really thinking about, I guess, the why behind everything.
I love this story so much because it pinpoints something that I bark on about so much. All the listeners are like, oh God, here she goes again. But the reason I say it is because people have this misconception that to get into a technology role, you have to have a degree or you have to come from some sort of mathematical background. You came from a real sort of creative arts background. So I would love to know, and I'd be fascinated to know, how has that helped you become so good at what you do today? Like, what did that teach you? Because I feel like there's so many different pathways that we can come into technology through, but I can imagine that creative spin that you've had has really helped your career journey so far.
Yeah, I guess it just helps me to approach problems from a different perspective, and actually always to start with looking for the problem before going to the solution. I think that's a really important aspect when it comes to AI, especially, is really just thinking, what are we actually trying to solve and what is the human problem? And then actually going, what's the best way of solving it? And sometimes AI might not be the best way of solving it. I think another element is just really just having empathy with people. So in terms of my arts background, I also did psychology, and I think that really helped to really just understanding the human aspect. And I think that's what really drew me into that aspect of technology in particular. I sort of think that technology is only as good as the adoption. And when it's rolled out into an organization without considering that side of things, I talk about it being like organ rejection. You can put new technology in, but unless the organization is ready and it's designed for the humans who are using it, then they're just going to reject the technology, and in fact, probably quite actively reject it and not want to use it.
That's such a really good analogy. And I think that you're so right. I see a lot of organizations panic about how we're going to get AI into our business when actually they need to get the foundations first and foremost. And you've touched upon something as well about like the human element of it all and the customer experience of it all and how we're going to make sure that we think about them and how we're going to make sure that it's accessible for all. It's so much to consider right now. But I'd love for you to walk us through how this role actually came about and how did you put your hand up for it? Were you tapped on the shoulder? How did you move into such an important role within the business?
It kind of happened naturally because we've been going through our own internal transformation at Datacom. And as part of that, I was helping to really explore what could be some growth opportunities for us. And I also have a background in futurism. So I was facilitating quite a lot of sessions about what's coming in terms of the future, what are the signals of change, and how could that either transform or really severely disrupt us. And as part of that, I spoke to a lot of customers about what the same for them, what could transform them, what could disrupt them, how could Datacom be a better partner for them. And as part of that, a lot of the conversation at the time, this was about 18 months ago, was just about AI. And really it was, starting to think about what could especially generative AI mean for them, how could it change them. And from that, I just started to look at, okay, therefore, what are the propositions that we would need at Datacom to support customers with those challenges that they're having with AI? But overall, also, what could we shift from and to as a result of AI as a whole business? So really just helping to go, yes, we might have one change to this service or a new service over here, but actually the whole message that this isn't just a tech upgrade, this is a fundamental shift in the way that we work. This is electricity or this is the internet. So what could that mean for us? And I guess because I was just naturally facilitating that thinking for us and helping customers to do the same, that this was just a role that sort of emerged for me. And to be honest, it's something that I didn't even think about applying for, because even though I've been working in technology for, coming up 20 years, I still don't think of myself as a technologist. I still think of myself as someone who designs for and with humans. So I thought it might actually be too technical for me, but that's exactly why I was encouraged to apply for it, because I bring that other lens. And really, our leadership at Datacom, that's really important to us as Datacom, is actually what is the role of humans in all of this, and how do we create agency and purpose in the how AI interacts with humans.
There's so many questions that I have for you, but I'm really curious of like, you're obviously working at the forefront of it all. What are you seeing? What are like some barriers? Like, what are you sort of hearing that companies are concerned about? What sort of some exciting new developments? Like overall, is it positive or are companies concerned?
I think it's both. And I think that it really depends on who you're speaking to. So I hear everything from a sort of Chicken Little, like the sky is falling, people throwing up their hands and going, it's too late, AI is taking over and there's nothing we can do about it, and just absolute fear about what that's going to mean for humans, right through to people going, is there even anything in this? Is this just the next blockchain? And then everything in between. What I'm definitely seeing is a lot of people taking advantage of it, which I'll go into a little bit in a moment, and some really incredible applications that are having real tangible benefits. But then I'm also seeing a lot of risks emerge as well that really need consideration, and in some ways, some sort of complacency about the risks, which kind of worries me. I sort of think there's many ways this could go. And I think we actually need to, I always think in futurism of a collapsed future, we need to think about what the collapsed future is in order to mitigate that future from happening. So some of the things that pretty much many customers talk about is shadow IT in their organization. So they're people really wanting to take advantage of things like generative AI and using tools like Claude and ChatGPT, but with enterprise data. That comes up over and over again. And in some cases, people aren't shutting it down because if it's not too risky, because people are just seeing so much benefits from using those productivity tools. And so we're really having to quickly support customers to do things like help them to develop internal use policies, think about how they could actually provide those tools, but in a safe and enterprise way that's secure. As well as actually building a proper governance process and a charter for them as an organization. But then going back to the benefits, I'm seeing some amazing benefits across our own organization and with customers and at so many different levels. So I think about an organization as having stages. So my background is also service design. So I think about the front stage and the backstage and kind of behind the scenes. And in the front stage, I'm seeing people create incredible conversational AI tools to help people to wayfind their, to information that's going to make their lives easier. Sort of creating more effortless user experience, creating more personalized experiences, being able to use multimodal ways of getting to information, whether it's their voice or just typing in text. And then in the backstage, I'm seeing a lot of what I call boring but functional tools that are being really successful to help with productivity. So that can be things as simple as we created an AI tool for a company. There was one person who I feel sorry for them. Their whole role was about triaging complaints just from email to Jira. And so just a really simple tool that's just about like actually instantly classifying complaints. And now that person's whole role is more about a proactive role where they're starting to get themes of what's coming up and they can proactively start resolving things before it becomes a complaint, or scheduling tools to help with doing timesheets that no one likes doing. And then behind the scenes, I think the thing that I'm probably the most excited about is really the way that you can use AI to help with the development of applications and solutions. So I've worked in digital transformations for so many years now, and I've just seen how tedious it can be to try and extract 30 years of business logic from, say, a legacy government application. And I've seen so many digital transformations be derailed as a result of it because that current state takes such a long time. So internally at Datacom, we've developed a way of using AI to do application modernization, and it's pretty incredible. We have AI agents or workers helping humans to do that. We have an AI agent who's a project manager and one that's a technical lead, that's a business analyst. And it's able to do things like extract business logic in days rather than months and years. And to be able to create new code out of legacy code, again, in a matter of days or weeks. So digital transformations that might have taken 3 years could now be potentially done in a couple of months. That to me just really blows my mind. And it makes me think about the amount that we could save in terms of and so on.
It's so exciting, but also quite scary as well. Can you talk more about AI agents and what they are, and give a bit of an overview of like what you've seen? You just mentioned something there about one that's sort of like really sort of basically taking what would take maybe 3 years as a business transformation to 3 months. But for those that are like listening to this now, like what on earth is an AI agent? Could you sort of explain exactly what it is and how they can be used?
Yeah, for sure. So the way I normally describe it is by starting with talking about cognitive offloading. So cognitive offloading isn't new. It's something that we've done for years. So it started way back if you think about navigating for a long journey across the sea, we cognitively offload some of that to navigation tools and to maps and so on. So it's something that we've always done. Now, for me, the difference between an AI agent and an AI assistant is the degree of cognitive offloading. So I sort of think about it, there's sort of 3 different pathways. And this is what I look at when looking at different workflows and organizations and what's the right approach to take. So the first one is human only. We do it ourselves. And there's a lot of things undeniably that are just best for humans to do and should always just be human first. The second is humans plus AI, and this is where we're seeing a lot of co-pilots or AI assistants being able to help with tasks to either minimize risk or just to make it easier for us to access the knowledge that we need to do that task. And where agents come in is more AI only, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the final decision is with AI, but it's AI being able to take on whole parts of workflow and in some cases, the whole end-to-end workflow. Now, where that becomes important for us as an organization when that's starting to come in is us deciding the role that we want AI to take and how much we want to hand the car keys over to AI versus where we want to have those really important human friction points.
It's so fascinating. And what I keep coming back to, and again, I'm somebody that thinks this is going to be amazing for our future, but I'll be lying if I said I wasn't slightly concerned for quite a few people. And I'll give you an example. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and there's a new product that comes out. We're talking about voice AI. And it's basically like programmed to pick up any leads. So a customer can dial a number and it goes straight to an AI voice, basically. It's not a human being. She picks up the phone. Hi, this is business name. How can I help? And then the customer would say, oh, I've just seen this ad and this is what I'm looking for. And she was literally speaking like a human being to this customer. And by the end of it, she had his email, follow up. And I thought, it was a company called Early Bird, right? So the whole idea of like, you miss out on so many leads because if somebody's trying to dial your number, people sleep, so if you're trying to have a global business, for example, you might just have staff working 9 to 5 in Australia, but there could be people trying to do business with you in UK and America. Well, obviously these AI agents, these AI bots, voices, whatever you want to call them, they don't sleep. They're 24/7 access. So all these leads are coming in and AI is able just to have these conversations. But Lou, the way she spoke, I thought to myself, she sounds chirpy. She sounds like she's not having a bad day. She's not just had an argument with her kids or her husband. She's not hangry. I was like, if I spoke to her or something like that every time, what a great customer experience I'm going to have. And I thought to myself, she's not going to ring in sick. She's not going to, like all these things. And I thought to myself, why would a business now employ customer service staff when literally for that call they said cost them 60 cents? For 60 cents, you could have this technology throughout your whole business and completely take out your customer service people. That concerns me slightly. I think that the innovation's outstanding, but I put my business owner hat on and I go, why would I pay somebody $50,000 a year when I could pay AI 60 cents a call and have that customer service 24/7 running? Like that kind of makes me go, is that where we're headed? I love your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that's it does worry me. I guess I do think about the role that AI is going to play in humans and just the workforce in general. But I guess I think that the capabilities are still emerging. Yes, I think AI is really good at sounding human, but it's not. And so sometimes the things that make it sound human are actually at processing and things like that. So I don't know if you've noticed on that demonstration when there's a pause and it sounds like the AI is kind of going, that's often it's just processing. It's, bringing things into its context window. I do think that it works really well if everything goes smoothly on the call. Where it doesn't work well is when it's more of an edge case that requires human empathy and human creativity and human decision making. So an example might be an airline. That would work really well. And I think if you decide the tasks that are actually, you could just find out that information from the website. AI is great for that. So it might be something about even just changing a flight. That's pretty simple. Or it might be about your points balance or just finding out information. But if, say, for example, there's a death in the family, you're needing to do very last minute traveling, you're traveling with someone with accessibility issues, this is where I think those nuances are so important, and that actually the AI won't be able to detect. So I think I think for businesses, it's actually going, what are those top tasks that actually it is fine. Again, it comes back to those decision points of where do we want it to play a role. I also think it's really important to go, what kind of organization do you want to be? Because I think human is the new currency. Like, I actually think it's a luxury. Yes, sometimes you might have people who've had a bad day and they won't present as friendly. But I think in general, humans are better at picking up in the nuances of conversation in terms of the sort of support that someone needs on a call.
100%. But just to put something funny, I was just thinking then how good this AI would have been. So my husband and I broke down and we were calling the RACV. And I don't know how many people we spoke to before we got a pickup, but every single person was either finishing their shift or let me get back to you. I mean, the customer service was shocking, I'll be honest. And I thought to myself, I reckon AI would have more empathy with us right now. The fact that we're stuck on the side of the road in a danger zone and nobody was ringing back to us. Nobody gave us any idea of what was going on or when a truck was going to be with us. And we were stuck on the side of the road for 4 hours. And every time I called back, we were on to a different person. And I just thought, you see, this is where humans, and you said then about the human element, need to actually develop our skills, our human skills, our empathy skills, our leadership skills, our communication skills. This is what is going to separate us from AI, because why would a business pay for somebody if AI is going to do a better job? That's the issue. And I think that human beings, we need to take a bit of like ownership now and be like, well, if we want to have a job and we're now not competing with other humans, we're now competing with AI, we need to make sure we're upskilling ourselves. And I think there's not enough people that are probably doing that and really working on themselves. So any thoughts to that? I mean, that was just one example I thought of there. I thought, God, that AI agent would have been far better in that situation than Karen, Sue, and Derek, who just didn't care that I was stuck on the side of a road for 4 hours.
No, I think that's a beautiful point. Thinking about actually if they are the most important aspects, our empathy and our creativity, what does that mean for us? A couple of things came to mind. I think that we need to be careful, therefore, about when we are hiring. Who are we hiring? And I think that's the same if technical skills, what I'm talking about earlier with modernisation, if technical skills are going to be that much easier because of AI, if customer service is going to be easier, making sure that the people that we do hire are the ones who have those traits that we're talking about that are really distinguished. I think that there's a lot to consider. I also think in terms of the people that you spoke to on the phone, thinking about why are they in the mood that they're in? Why did they have the apathy and what's creating those conditions? I often think about it as an iceberg. They're presenting this behavior, but there's a lot going underneath the surface. So in a lot of cases, people who are in contact centers are struggling with swivel chairing between multiple systems. They probably got duped on their shift and they're having to do a double because they're covering someone else. There's all of these reasons. Humans act a way that they are acting for a reason. It's not usually just, I think most people don't wake up and go, I'm going to be a jerk today. There's some things behind it. So I think we can also look on the flip side of if we actually can use AI to help with, I think backstage, really helping people to have better experiences at work, then they can present themselves in the best way.
Yeah, absolutely. Really critical and beautiful point made there. So let's touch upon then this as well, because I think this is again where leadership comes in, and I'd love to get your take on just leadership in general, because there's a thing, employees only sort of act and will be certain ways. Yeah, okay, sometimes stuff might be going on in their personal life, but also what culture are they working in? Who's their leadership? Who's their boss? How are they made to feel? Are they made to feel psychologically safe? Are they well rested? Are they encouraged to, take some days off, or are they overworked and burnt out? Where do you sort of see businesses going over the next sort of like as a futurist? Like, we've gone from COVID to completely remote. Now offices are trying to force employees back into the office 5 days a week, or it's like there's lots going on at the moment. And I think it's creating a bit of friction between business owners and businesses and employees. Like, What's your take on this? And also, how can AI play a really positive role in all of this as well?
Yeah, I think just going back to, you brought up signals then and signals of what I'm seeing. So a lot of signals are around obviously huge leaps and bounds that we're making in terms of technology. So those bigger capabilities. But on a more social side, I'm seeing a revolt against that. So, we're getting so much busier. There's a lot more that's expected of us from work. What I'm not seeing a lot of is organizations are gaining this productivity and it's being given back to their people so that they can actually enjoy a better lifestyle. What I am seeing are things like protests, especially from generations like Gen Z and Gen Alpha, really not wanting to be as overworked as the generations before them. So there's still, I think we're getting busier, there's higher expectations. I think we're going to need to be able to attract younger generations to workplaces. I think there's going to have to be some budge from organizations really about how, if we are getting more productive because of technology, how humans can then be compensated by not being overworked, by allowing time off with our families and so on. So I think that I'm really fascinated with watching that tension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's such a beautiful point made. And we run events. So we ran an event a couple of months ago, and that point was made on the panel. One of the women said she was a really big advocate for a 4-day work week. And she said, instead of trying to squeeze every little bit of productivity out of your employees, why don't instead you utilize the technology and not threaten them with it, not be like, oh, this will take your job. How about, they use it as their Copilot, and they then can have be more productive in the hours that they work, but then actually be able to switch off at the end of the day and spend the time with the family. Like, could we be thinking about AI in that way? And I think that's a really positive way that everyone can get on board with. Whereas I think people are generally scared and concerned for the future of their work, the future of their job. And it's almost like it's being shoved in their face of like, well, this is going to 10x the productivity and could even take your job. And I think that's the wrong approach, because I think we're just going to create more fear around it.
I completely agree. I think that comes back to sort of one of the earlier points that I made. First of all, about the idea of organ rejection. Like, if you just force someone to use a technology, they're going to reject it. But also, I keep using this word agency. I think giving people agency in the role that AI is going to play is really crucial. So I'll give you an example. Recently, we did a project with a government ministry in New Zealand, and their chief exec was really excited about technology, used to work in a tech company, and came to us with some ideas of AI solutions that could help his team's productivity, because they're a really small team with a massive remit. And so we sort of looked at the ideas, and I sort of made a suggestion. Why don't we go back actually to the problem that you're trying to solve? What is it in your team that's actually stopping them from being more productive or just having a better experience? And so instead, we went through a sort of co-design or a co-production process with their team. We got 30 people from the team. We got them to look at their workflow, and we called it understanding your mahi, understanding your work, and actually got them to think about actually what are all the tasks that they do in a day? What information are they using for those tasks? What systems are they touching? And if they were able to outsource parts of their job to an AI agent or assistant, what would they outsource? And then what would it mean for the rest of their workflow? How would it adapt? And what changes could it bring? And then we went through a process of actually prioritizing those use cases or tasks that were identified to go, which ones would have the most benefit to the organization. So yes, some of them are just going to help one person, some are going to help many. What ROI was it going to bring? How much time would it save? Would it compromise process and so on? And then we landed on a particular use case that helped a lot of people, and that they'd all chosen. And then we took them through the process of actually co-designing this solution together. And what came up was two things. One was the use case that was identified was completely different to the solutions from the beginning. It was something that hadn't even been thought of. And secondly, because they'd all been part of deciding it, there was basically no change in adoption process that was required, because it was actually a solution that was by nature built in to help them in their workflow. And it's something now that a lot of them are using. All of them are using it. It's helping their productivity, but most importantly, they actually feel less afraid of the role that AI is going to play in their organization, because that organization has shown them this is how we're going to do it. We're going to give you a role to play, and you're going to have agency in deciding. So I think that's really important up front, is actually involving humans, not just at the end to go to that, we've got the solution for you, but the whole way through.
Such a great example there of what companies can be doing to really take their employers on a journey and to make sure they're not sort of like, reacting in fear. Because I think a lot of people just read the headlines, but not the substance. And one of the headlines that I was seeing, like Salesforce is going to start firing off all their engineers because they're going to start using the power of AI. And I thought, God, that's the one industry of like developers that I thought were going to be protected. And then there's Salesforce saying all the engineering is going to be gone in the next couple of years. And I'm thinking, you can read that and you can go, oh my God, that is frightening. But I feel like these headlines are coming out, and that's what's creating the fear in people of like, oh my God, am I actually going to have a job in 2-3 years' time? Even like I work in recruitment, and there's constantly new tools coming out that are, utilizing AI and sourcing. But I think there's going to be so many things as human beings that we have always are going to have. And it's that, again, that human elephant, that empathy, that negotiation, that sort of side of things that AI will hopefully not for a number of years yet won't have on us. And it sort of brings me on to my next sort of question about this upskilling. What do you advise people to start thinking about when it comes to like the future of tech and their careers? What could be some real tangible things that we could all start maybe looking into now to make sure that we are staying relevant?
I think it's actually just being brave and using it and trying it out. So I know some people who have that same reaction to what you've talked about, where they're really worried about how AI might disrupt them and, replace humans. And so their reaction to that is actually just to ignore it altogether and to just run as far away from it as they can. So I know it's becoming a bit of a cliche now, but that whole thing of, AI won't replace you, someone who uses AI will replace you. I think there's something in that, because there's a lot of friends that I have who are absolute experts in their field. And I think leaning into being that expert in your field and adding knowledge of tech and AI is just so powerful, because a generic tech company, say a friend of mine who's a real estate agent, she knows real estate better than anyone. She's been in the industry for 20 years. She's a complete boss when it comes to real estate. So she knows within her work, what are the friction points? What are the really annoying parts that are, slowing me down, that are making my staff annoyed? She doesn't really know AI, but if she adds in sort of, does some micro credentials in learning about AI, learning the capabilities that it can have, trying to use tools like Claude and ChatGPT, just experimenting with what it can do, then she can add this whole other layer into what she does. And I've actually heard of someone who's an accountant and her husband's a technologist, and he did exactly that process with her, went through her accountancy firm, worked out what those friction points were. They developed some AI agents and assistants to help with the workflow. They've now become a tech company who sells those to other people. So in doing it, it can open up these whole lots of opportunities. So yes, your job might change. You might become more of an orchestrator of the technology, the technology doing things on your behalf. But unless you actually lean in and try, I do think there is risk of being disrupted in one way or another.
This is so interesting. You just said real estate as well. And again, a prime example of like accounting, real estate, really sort of like service-based sales jobs. And that product that I just spoke to, the voice product, the guy on the podcast was saying that he was interested in a house, and he texts the agent to say, hey, interested in this house, when's the viewings, whatever. And for like 40 hours, hadn't heard anything back. And they were sort of saying, if this person had like an AI attached to that, and they emailed the real estate agent, and that someone came back within literally a minute, hey, Lou, great to hear from you. These are the showings this week. Let me know if you'd like to come along. Here's a booking link. Simple little things like that. You're going to start bringing in more leads, because as we know, every single sales role, if you have a lag time, you could lose business. And that person could go to another viewing, view another house, and they've lost 50 grand in comms, right? That's going to revolutionize your sales structure, your business. That's exciting. So if your friend was to look into products like that, she could literally go from earning X amount in comms
to doubling and tripling her output for not doing any more work because she's not physically sending the text. How exciting.
100%. And that's exactly that boring but functional role that AI can play that I'm talking about. And now that agent not texting back for 48 hours, I guarantee it's just because they're so busy and they've just got so many inquiries that they can't keep hold of them. To me, that's not actually taking away a part of their job that they want. It's actually leaving them then to freeing them up to do what they do best, which is probably actually meeting with that person, taking them through the property, talking about what they need, matching them to the right kind of property. Yeah.
Exactly. You just have to link to a questionnaire. What are you looking for? I mean, it would just be such a lead magnet, wouldn't it? But these sort of things you can just implement into your day-to-day are absolute gold. So I think like the next sort of thing that I really wanted just to get your opinion on is that obviously we do have a shortage of young girls and women in tech at the moment. And with AI sort of evolving the way it is, obviously one of my missions with Sister Club is to make sure that the future of tech is inclusive for all. Like, what's been some of your, I guess, experiences as a female in tech? And what do you think can be done, in your opinion, to sort of encourage more of young girls and women to see this as a really good career option?
Look, I've had mixed experiences when it comes to being a woman in tech. I've been in really empowering roles and really empowering organizations. And I've also had challenges. And I see this as, it's not a female problem, it's a diversity problem. So what I saw early on in my career is I started in a new job. I was it was my first week and I was in a leadership team meeting for the first time. They were discussing a new initiative that hadn't gone very well. And I asked in the meeting, I was one of two females in the meeting, just as context. I asked why they hadn't tested this. It was a new feature, if they had tested it with users before they launched it. And there was a few looks, and I kind of got from the question that maybe they hadn't tested it. As I was walking out of the meeting, the other female in the room, pulled me aside and said, just try to be more undercover smart in the future. And that was a really interesting moment for me because I guess I'd been quite lucky that I'd never really experienced that probably to that extent before. But what it made me realize is it's actually about allowing different opinions. And so that opinion, the diversity isn't just necessarily because you're female, or it could be, you just have a different way of thinking. What has become really important to me in my career and as a leader is to create a culture in which all perspectives are welcome and valued. And actually, it's often from the most unexpected opinions that the best ideas come from. And I think that, really us seeing diversity as an antenna, I guess, in our organization for things that could be missed. For example, someone with ADHD who can think about 5 things at once might detect something almost like AI that other people might miss because they've got really incredible pattern recognition. So really just leaning into our diversity and going, where are the strengths that we can get from it? And just, I guess, allowing people to have a unique perspective is super important.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree with you. And I think it's, obviously there's a lot of talk around D&I at the moment for obvious reasons, obviously looking at what America are doing and things. And I think that the one thing I don't want to see happen is people stop investing in trying to attract more diverse talent. And the reason being, especially in technology, is that we're not just creating products and services for one gender or one type of person in our society. Our society is so broad, and AI is only going to be as good as what we're actually inputting into it. And if we're just constantly putting in the same thing by the same people, it's then going to actually start to have bias. And then I sort of think about then how this is going to be used when it comes to recruitment software and HR things. It might start bringing up talent that is only one type of person. And these things really concern me. Whereas if we had diverse teams of, females and different, all sorts of like ethnicity, characteristics and identities and things, you're going to get a broad sense of actually this product is really thinking about everybody and it's accessible for all. And that's why I don't think we can stop trying to attract and retain I'm going to talk to women because obviously that's where I play, but diverse voices in tech, because otherwise we are really going to find ourselves in a position where all of the products and services that AI create is only going to be appealing to one type of person.
I agree. And I also think that comes down not just in the way that systems are engineered and the way that they're programmed and the way we're prompting them, but also in the information that they consume. So we really need to have diverse voices in terms of content that's being made as well. Because otherwise, I've read a lot about actually, how models are getting worse and worse because there's so much AI generated content out there now. It's not about people's voices. We're just creating this very vanilla, generic content that isn't actually expressing human voices. It's really just being produced again and again. So I think it's important as well for that diversity in voices, in terms of the information as well.
I completely agree. And I guess the only other example I've got is that, I've sort of looked into crypto over the years and blockchain, and you can just tell that all of these platforms have not been created by women. Because I look at it and I go, I don't like these colors. This is so unappealing. There's so much text. This is so confusing. And I'm thinking, I bet you if I looked at their engineering team, there's just, exactly the same person 10 times over. And it's just obvious. And when the products and service come to light. So I think that, it's not accessible. I look at it and I go, this just looks so confusing. And actually, when my husband sat down with me and said, well, this is how it all works, it made perfect sense to me. But initially I was like, oh, this isn't very nice. This isn't very nice to look at. So it's just interesting how, when you start bringing up these services, and I think it's really important for women to look into AI, look into Web3, look into blockchain, look into even cryptocurrencies. All of these things are really important, but they don't seem very accessible for everyone.
I completely agree. And also just being able to feel safe enough to bring it up. So if that was the case, how good would it have been if you worked for that company and you could actually have the space to bring up, what, this just isn't working for me. And actually, if they properly built in testing with a diverse group of users, that would have come up as well. So this is why I'm always the annoying voice in a meeting that goes, have we tested with customers? Have we tested with staff? Have we tested with a diverse group of people? Because it's only in actually using it that we and in real life that we actually start to see that this might not be as perfect as we think it is.
100%. And people aren't going to write in and be like, oh, that user experience was really poor. People haven't got time to do that. So you're just losing half the market share until someone else with a diverse team comes along and builds exactly the same product, but makes it more accessible, and you've missed out. So I actually think it's a business strategic decision to make sure that you've got lots of different people in the room that can come from different perspectives. And that's how you're going to start building really good products and services in this next technology revolution. So that's why. Yeah.
And even if you're not doing it, even if you were just doing it because you want to make more money, I hope that people do it for the right reasons, because we should do that. But in the end, it will actually make you more money. I was involved in a long time ago in a website redevelopment program, and I sort of flagged the accessibility of the website, that it wasn't meeting AA compliance, and they sort of kicked on with the project anyway, just to sort of meet the deadline. It was all about sort of deadline and budget. Then they ended up getting a complaint from someone, a vision impaired person who couldn't actually use the site. They ended up having to do a payout and do the accessibility anyway. So it's, it sort of seems like it's a false economy to not spend time on it anyway.
Mm-hmm. You're so right. And that's a prime example of that. Companies actually, it's cost them more money on the back end if they just paused. And I think that's actually something that people probably need to just think about. It's and you'll probably see this as well, there seems to be a rush of oh, we got to get this AI solution in our business. Actually just stop and pause and be like, why? What are you actually trying to achieve here? Why are you doing this? I think people are just panicking and throwing things together, and they're not really stopping to be like, what's the impact this is going to have? Why are we doing this? So a final few questions, for someone listening to this right now that, is maybe a small business owner or somebody looking to get into AI. You've mentioned start playing around with it, but any particular tools that we should sort of start? Is it ChatGPT? Is it Copilot? Are they sort of good ones to sort of test our?
I think it depends on sort of what you're trying to achieve for it. So I sort of think when you're thinking about what I call productivity tools, there's a couple of ways to look at it. So I think of them as personal productivity and functional productivity. So personal productivity as the sort of Swiss Army knife tools that can kind of help with anything. And that's where you're looking at things like Copilot, ChatGPT, and Claude. Now, Copilot, I think, is great for, I call it beelining your way around Microsoft. It's really good for a shorter destination between two places in Microsoft and making that environment a lot easier. When it comes to me, when I'm thinking about more sort of strategic work and a little bit more, if I'm, say, writing a strategy or something like that, or just sort of doing some interpretation of data, this is where I actually think it's really good to start thinking about more the Claudes and the ChatGPTs of the world. With that said, a big caveat that you need to be very careful about what you're putting into it, and that there's a big difference between public AI and enterprise AI. So I think personally, some of the best money that organizations could spend at the moment is having enterprise versions of good large language models like Claude, and just giving access to their team and letting them have a play around with it. That's probably, whenever people ask me that, I sort of start with that. And then I think you could start looking at the more what I call functional productivity tools, which is looking at specific functions or roles within your organization, and going, how could AI help or augment, optimize, automate elements of that? And that's when you can start looking into more bespoke tools that actually you yourselves build if you have the technical capability, or partner with another technology company.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. I mean, I don't know where I was without ChatGPT, to be honest. Like, I mean, I use it every single day, just for simple things like, helping me write job briefs, job descriptions, just like things like that would have taken me so much longer. Like even helping me prep for a podcast, all these things, like what would be some great questions to ask people, and even editing this podcast. I'm not even sure what program we use, but I've watched the team and just shove it all into this new AI tool, and it cuts it all up, and 3 hours worth of work in 3 minutes. Like there's so much out there to play around with. It's exciting, and it's not being afraid of it. It's being curious. But look, what's next for you in your career? Like, I mean, you've achieved so much. Like, honestly, I hope that you've sort of taken a moment to be like, wow, like all these skills that I've accumulated. And I guess it's a probably 2-part question. What's next for you, and how are you also future-proofing your career and staying relevant as we evolve so quickly?
I think that's a great question. I think it kind of goes hand in hand, those two things actually, because really what I really want to be in AI to shape it for the good. And so that is a big driver for me. And, I talked about futurism. I think if, we have possible futures, we have our growth future slightly better than we are now, our transform where we're completely different, then there's the potential collapse for things to go horribly wrong. So for me, I want to remain part of it in whatever way I can to try and shape it for the good. And a big part of that is, helping with education, helping to think about it from a slightly different way, and really just, flying that human flag to just remind us that we need to be designing for and with people. And so then in terms of, how I'm going to continue shaping my career, it's really about learning and continuing to look at what's coming. So I've always been really passionate about sort of monitoring signals and what's changing. And so for me, it's really just keeping across those changes and just trying to learn as much as I can about what's coming. And I sort of do this, this 3-step thing when I'm looking at a signal where I go, what, so what, and now what? And so I want to continue to evaluate that, both in terms of, the organizations that I'm working with, but also for myself is, just to really think it on the fly about what that could mean.
Amazing. And I think that's just such a great mission and reason to keep doing what you're doing, to make sure that, this new tech is accessible, inclusive for everybody, and it doesn't just fall into one hand. I think that, we need female voices in this space. So Lou, keep doing what you're doing. Keep being this beacon of hope in our industry, and keep sharing your voice, because it's such an important one. But if people want to connect with you, find out more about you, where can I send them? Where do you hang out the most?
So probably the best place for me is on LinkedIn. So I'm under Lou Compagnone on LinkedIn. So just reach out, send me a message. And yeah, I'd love to chat. Lots of events that I've spoken at recently, I've had women especially come and talk to me, and just to thank me, just to say we hadn't actually thought about a career in AI, and that I'd sort of given them a different perspective in that they actually could come from a different background. They could bring a different perspective. So yeah, if that's you, then please reach out. I'd love to connect. I love curiosity connects with people, even if it sort of doesn't make sense at the time. So yeah, please get in touch. Thank you so much, Georgie. It's been a great conversation.
No, it's been wonderful having you on. And I think that's just such a beautiful way to end. And I think that this is exactly what I talk about. You don't need to be a technologist to get into AI, and you're a walking, talking proof of that. But you do need to be curious, and you do need to be open-minded as well. So, Lou, it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Georgie.